Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Neil for a very, very special spoiler discussion. We are, of course, going to be deep diving into The Penguin, which is literally the moment this video is going up and scheduled in for, has just finished airing its bracket first question mark season. A discussion for later, as I've seen many people tweeting asking for a second season. But before we start talking all things Colin, Farrell, prosthetics, and gangsters, Neil, how are you doing today?
I am good, thank you. I'm so happy that I can talk to someone about this. Finally.
So people at home, we're pre-recording this on Friday the 8th. I was given the episode a day ago, very fortunately. And for anyone wondering where the weekly spoiler discussions were, there were so many shows out, and when I actually got sent the first episodes, I had no voice for like 2 weeks, and I couldn't then watch this because I was ill. I couldn't actually talk about it, and by the time I could speak again, it was already a couple of episodes in. So we've not spoken about the Penguin on this channel. You were on our very first hyping up the Batman series back in 2022, so this is almost full circle in a way.
Yeah, true.
Are you allowed to say when you saw this series?
Yeah. So
you really have been waiting.
I think I even mentioned it in one of our videos. So I reckon when we did one of our Mount Rushmores,
Yes.
or it might have even been before that, when you and I have done something DC recently, I said I'm watching The Penguin and I can't say a thing. But I saw this at the end of August. So I have been holding on to this for like 10, 11 weeks where I just had to park it and be like, so I've not even, basically what we've been doing on the website is we've just been doing like the episode stills every week and just here's the synopsis, here's what's coming up this week. I have not been watching it. I have not been talking to anyone about it because I couldn't quite remember what was what episode apart from some of the major milestones. So I've just kept quiet because I just did not want to say anything that was going to spoil it.
I understand that. People at home, like, this is what happens, like, when you're very lucky as press, like ourselves can be, like Neil can be, it's all about the attitude, and you have the right one that you weren't. Even when I've seen people telling me to watch Penguin, I'm sort of there, like, I've got 5 episodes, but I don't want to watch 5 in a row and then wait 5 weeks to get to the 6th one, because I do want to do it all together or do it weekly properly. And as someone that hasn't watched it weekly, the same as yourself, the reception for this series online, the week to week, I know people are going to talk about HBO's viewership, where I believe it's actually had 7 weeks in a row, every episode has had a further audience figure go up, and I feel that that's unparalleled. It's its most viewed original show since The Last of Us, which is
crazy,
almost 2 years ago. And who would have ever thought that a spin-off from the Batman would end up being in this? It was the Penguin. It wasn't the Joker, which we may talk about later. It wasn't the Batman on TV. It wasn't Harley Quinn. It was the Penguin. It was someone that had 2-3 scenes in the 2022 film, and it's gone on to be, I reckon, could go down as the best. I've not seen Shogun. I don't know if it was this year or last year.
Either,
I do think the Penguin will go down as probably one of the most spoken about shows of the year.
Yeah.
And kind of my initial thoughts on the episodes, we'll get into it properly because it is a spoiler discussion. And people watching at home, you can comment spoilers now. We're making sure we're not doing this early. I want to know your thoughts on the episode, the finale, your thoughts on the whole show, everything. I don't want to say DC because that's a bit unfair, but Neil, is there an official term for Matt Reeves' Batman universe? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he's called it is it the Gotham Crime Universe? It's something Crime Universe.
The show goes that way, but it's one of them where
it's the Batman Epic Crime Universe.
I wish they could drop the epic, but I understand.
Yeah, it's a bit random.
It's a bit not like childish, but I don't really look at this thing epic. I think of this as like pristine.
The Batman Epic Crime Saga. Sorry, is the exact wording from Matt Reeves. Epic Crime Saga.
Okay, should we call it the Reeves-verse for video's sake?
Reeves-verse, yeah.
Which a lot of people do, don't they? And it's Matt Reeves is involved in this series, but yeah, we do want to hear from people at home. So comment your thoughts. As I said, all things Matt Reeves. We know the sequel's going to be shooting early next year. We know the script is now finished. These are all official updates. And I think it's 2026. Is it October 2026?
It is.
So, we'll be talking about at the end of the video. So, people at home, please do get involved. I do want to know how this goes down. But yeah, my initial thoughts on the episodes, as I said, I think it's one of the best shows of the year. I'll talk about my thoughts heading into it, but very briefly over to yourself. Watching this a couple of months ago, did you think this would go on to have the success it's had?
No, I didn't. I was excited to see what they would do. I thought he was great in the Batman, like most people did, and I was interested to see what they would be able to do taking that universe into a TV format. Um, Obviously, we don't have a lot of blueprint for
Yeah.
big movie universe working to TV. We've got Star Wars, we've got Marvel, which have worked to varying degrees in different shows. So I was kind of anxious about where it would go, but excited to see what they would do with it. And the second I started watching the first episode, I was like, damn, hooked completely. So they initially sent me the 5 episodes, and then the other 3 came like a couple of days later. But I had to try really hard to stop myself from just sitting for the first 5 hours in a block. And I think I did them kind of 2 at a time to space it out to try and not just binge it, because it really grabs you really quickly. So I'm really happy to see that it's caught on with an audience, because of random bit of insight. I was at the panel for it at San Diego Comic Con back in July, and the Penguin panel was right before the MCU panel, and I was sat in the press pen. And I loved every second of the Penguin panel. Thought it was amazing. Loved seeing Colin Farrell up on the screen, because he was not there but dialed in virtually. Cast, everything that we saw was awesome. There were people sleeping, and
So
most
waiting
people
for
were
it.
sitting there biding their time waiting for Marvel. And everyone was like, yeah, I'm not here. I don't care. No one cares about Penguin. And now I'm like, you all care about Penguin now. Now you all care about Penguin.
It's one of them where, for me at least, I like Marvel and DC. I don't believe in the childish war. I
Yeah,
understand
me neither.
every company's had their pros and their cons, whether it's comics, TV, film, games, all of it, each their own. Me personally, I've always gone with the logic that I think DC has made better comics. I think Batman is the best character of them all,
Hmm.
with Spider-Man, country mile those two. And I've always said
I'm
I
inclined
think,
to agree with you. He says
yeah, and
surrounded by Batman paraphernalia.
it's I've just always thought, yeah, Marvel make better films consistently, but The Dark Knight's better than anything I'd ever get with Marvel, and that's a very childish thing. But that's my
Yeah,
pretty neutral analysis of the whole thing. Same with a Green Goblin helmet behind me. Yes, it's funny
which
here.
is awesome, by
Um,
the way.
it's it's like my inner conscience at work. Like I want to go on a call and
I was
just
gonna say, does it
unblur the
talk to you?
background. It should talk for me. I should have like Willem Dafoe, like Misery, just in the corner room, just doing Green Goblin voices on camera. The Pumpkin Bond has a laugh, and it's not Willem Dafoe's, and that is creepy because it's so not right. Um, but yeah, this series, like when they announced it, I was the same. I thought I really love Colin Farrell in the Batman. I actually love Colin Farrell outside of the Batman too.
Yeah.
I saw it was After Yang that came out last year around the time of, oh god, I don't want to call it the Irish film, but
Oh, Banshees of Inisherin.
there we go, Banshees and Sharon. I started watching all of his interviews on YouTube and
Yeah.
his press, and I sort of fell in love with him. I think he's actually probably one of the most intelligent actors in Hollywood, and for some reason, without looking at someone's past, I guess growing up he was the party, the drinking type.
Yeah.
When you don't realize as an adult, it's like A, that was like 20 years ago, and B, actually he's a fucking great actor, and he's been through it, and he probably has some of the wisest um, interviews skills I've seen from people talking
Mhm.
about the industry. I actually love him. He's recently ran a marathon in Ireland, I believe, in order to raise awareness for a charity, raise over £50,000, which is remarkable that he did that.
He's got a disabled son, hasn't he? So I wonder if it was
Think
a
so.
charity for that. I watched there's a YouTube interview that's all about him and his son, because he kind of keeps his family out of the limelight a lot.
Yeah,
But there's this really in-depth interview that he did, just talking about his son and raising awareness about disability and being able to try and lead the most normal life you can, depending on what your abilities are. And it is heartbreaking stuff. It's amazing. He just wears his heart on his sleeve, and he has the most beautiful relationship with his son, and it's a really powerful watch.
he. I think he can be that again. If anyone curious, I'd recommend his Hot Ones video he did last year,
Mm.
because it is essentially just him talking about philosophy for 30 minutes, and it's fantastic. And I think he went on the show because of his family. Actually, he said that. I think they were really desperate for him to go on. So yeah, we're all going to give it the goods to Colin Farrell in this, and no doubt we'll talk about the Penguins as this goes on a lot. But there are some other key players, but yeah, just the build up to this. Like again, I was sold. I didn't need to be sold on the Penguin series. It's set in Matt Reeves' universe. He's involved in it. and I'm not going to criticize Marvel, but people may think it, but it's this is. I feel like this was marketed. It's going to be the bridge between Batman 1 and 2. We've not told you
Yeah.
it's the bridge between Batman 1 and 2, but it is. This isn't going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons. It was
Yeah.
just picking up from the events of the Batman. Literally, that seemed like the tagline. And my arrogant prediction, I know this is a spoiler video, so I can say I'm right. I'll say it straight away. From day one, if you look at the final few shots of the Batman, the montage, there is a key focus on the Penguin. That
Mm.
isn't we're just showing him because it's Colin Farrell. That's a strategic. I can't remember the voiceover part, but it's essentially talking about Gotham's underbelly and
Yeah.
things, and it's the Penguin. And I've always envisioned this show as he's going to be in the Batman Part 2, and I've always felt like this show is going to be Penguin's rise to power within the Gotham's underworld. That's not me being arrogant because we're talking after a finale. The video gone up before, I'd be saying the exact same thing in the exact same way, but I just thought, yeah, he's going to take over Falcone. There's a reason he's there with Falcone when
Yeah.
Falcone dies. Like, he's his right-hand man. He's at his shoulder. But to do the show, I'm going to end up comparing it to Godfather later. That's how prestigious I think this gets toward the end. But yeah, as far as a bridging series goes, one of the best. As far as a miniseries goes, one of the best miniseries of the year. But I guess this is a spoiler one. We can just say they bloody completed it. They completed the origin. We're going to start the Batman 2 with Penguin in a tux and a top
Yeah.
hat and a lovely suit, being in the prestigious high-end society of Gotham. Something that he definitely wasn't at the end of the Batman. And guess
Definitely
what?
not.
Not watching the Penguin isn't going to affect watching the Batman Part 2, which is
Thank you.
the
I
key
would.
purpose.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. Was if quite a lot of people said to me, like, firstly, do I need to have watched the Batman before I watch the Penguin? And I thought, to a lot of people, I said, if you want to get a flavor of who he is, then yes. But story wise, not necessarily. You will kind of wonder about why Gotham is in the kind of shape that it is at the beginning of the show. But in terms of following the character arcs, you can come into this show having not watched the film and then go, oh, cool, I'm going to go back and watch it. And likewise, if you haven't watched this show and you go into the Batman 2, you're going to be like, oh, wow, yeah, things have really changed for him in between. I can either go back and find out if I want to, or I kind of don't have to. Uh, it's not. I don't feel like it's necessary, but you really should watch it because it's freaking awesome.
It's that, and I'm glad you brought that. My family, so my dad and sister have seen the Batman film. We saw it at the cinema, and then my dad saw it again this year because he went to Liverpool and was like, "Oh, Batman's filmed it," and he didn't rewatch it before the series. In
Yeah,
fact, I know this because every week they tell me how great it is. He hadn't actually watched episode 1 of the Penguin, and he picked it up straight away. Don't know why he didn't watch episode 1, but I guess my sister had it on, and he started watching. He sold. He loved it. He loved the entire series from start to end, and he's obviously excited for the Batman Part 2.
Mm.
And I think where it kind of goes with that is it's that familiarity that you have a conscious knowledge of the underworld of this, but you don't have to have seen it. And the first episode does do a good little summary.
yeah,
The ending of the Batman. Hey, this crazy guy like blew up all the water, everything flooded, and spoilers. Selena Kyle's obviously name is thrown up right at the end, which people know. They didn't say, "Oh, Catwoman sent you a letter." It was Selena Kyle sent you a letter. She's your half sister,
yeah.
and my older sister hasn't watched the series yet. She's not seen the Batman yet, and I
Oh
have
wow.
told her I'm a bit stricter. I said you don't have to watch the Penguin, but you're doing yourself a disservice. Sorry, you don't
Yeah,
have to watch the Batman, but I really wouldn't be going in blind because you want, as you said, you want to get a flavour of Gotham. I think personally, you want to know the ending of the film,
yeah,
and you want to have seen the Penguin in his a couple of scenes to get to grips with it and where things are, and I guess where the film ends, so where the series ends. Sorry, with the bat signal, which is great. So many, a great ending, great ending. But I mean, we're talking a lot about things. Should we start off talking about Oz Cobb, as they asked him
oh,
to be known
yeah.
as? I know they eventually end up calling him Oswald, but they have officially dropped the pot,
The pot.
the all
Yeah,
pot. It's. I mean, I'm not that attached to the comics to care. We know he's the Penguin ultimately, but the one thing I give the show not just credit for, this show's got so much credit. This does the perfect balance of character development that we start with him picking up where we last saw him. He's still the number 2.
yeah,
Another Falcone's took over, so he hasn't made that jump yet. He's trying to play his game, but we get to see how across the series it isn't chucked in like, hey, here's this really ambiguous flashback in the first episode.
mm,
We get to see a sprinkle of there are certain things that shaped his childhood and tell him is the person he became. and then the show does the ultimate, not bait and switch. It then doubles down on the darkness eventually of, yeah, he killed his brothers, and his mom's actually terrified of him and knows everything about him. It wasn't a tragedy that turned him into the way he is. He was already gone at this point in time and is actually a genius. And I think I'd love to watch this back as a bundle of eight. I saw it in three sittings. So I did 1 to 4,
Yep.
5 to 7, and then 8 across like a week. So three sittings. Still luckier than most. I understand this worked properly week to week. Everyone spoke about it week to week.
Yeah.
It's elongated the show's existence, but this will be spoken about for a long time. But the origin, the young penguin sequences, I thought were equally as important as the later ones, and the structure of the series has really benefited from those choices. That again, it wasn't peppered in as a mystery in episode 1. It
Yep.
sort of came in maybe like episode 3, 4 time. Like you were getting little tidbits of, you would do Sophia's background, his background. You're piecing it together, and as you got closer to the finale, we got to see how lost he is, which to me doesn't make any of the big moments at the end of the episode a surprise. That he was always destined to go this way, and actually the show was telling us that from the very beginning, that he that's all he wants from life is to keep climbing for his. I almost did the impression for his ma.
It's yeah. You said it perfectly. It's so well structured. His whole arc. Um, and so we were just talking about this a little bit before we went live recording, but there is a there's a you can really easily get swept up in him because it's such a great performance and he's so charismatic that you really do kind of almost root for him to succeed, even though the things that he is doing are actually terrible. And it's really easy to forget that, even when he's creating a new drug to get out into the streets and doing all these other things, manipulating everyone around, you're still like, but he's such a great guy. And then bang, finale, just to remind you that he is an awful, awful, awful person. Um, but yeah, like you were saying, the stuff with the flashbacks is great. It's the fact that it doesn't just hand it to you. It's not like, let's do the whole linear thing where we'll start out and show him as a kid and then show what happens. The fact that you get bits of it over time, and then like I was saying to you earlier, like the fact that there's a bit of ambiguity towards the end as well, where he's either still blindly trying to convince people that anything he says is the truth, or the story that we've been given isn't necessarily, because it was coming from the mother's perspective and she is not, she has a lot going on, necessarily possibly exactly how it happened. So even now, I don't necessarily feel like I know the full story, and there's still bits that I think we haven't learnt yet, which is really, really exciting. But it's so well crafted.
Yeah, and an 8 episode structure. It's not 6. I know the 8 episode structure has come under fierce criticism in recent years.
Hmm.
And I tend to agree with it. I don't like the here's I don't like the we're doing a mini series, we're stretching it to 8 when it was conceived as a 2 hour film.
Yeah,
I don't like the here's a 12 episode season, 10 episode season, we're now dropping it to 8 and it's every 2 years. So this has clearly been written as an 8 episode series, or the story worked to be 8 and it ended up being 8. Whether it was going to be more or less, we don't know. But it absolutely nails exactly what we need from the character of Penguin. Flashback, current day, his associates, we can say nicely. But even kind of what you mentioned there, we get to see him being a terrible person. There are moments in this, you mentioned manipulation, which is probably the best term. He has the charisma, and I
yeah,
don't know if it's the writing of the Penguin or if it's Colin Farrell
all
or if
of
it's
it.
both of them
Yeah,
combined. Even when he's about to clearly get killed by Moroni, and he just happens to have a heart attack, which is not comical what
yeah,
happened, but his reaction to it is he is fuming that he didn't get to tell him like I won, I beat you. Then he continues to shoot him just
yeah,
to make sure everyone around him out of the bus knows that Penguin actually. What will go around is Penguin beat Moroni in a fight,
yeah.
which is the most outrageous, ridiculous thing you could think of. But he made it work.
It's
He
almost
makes it work.
it's almost weirdly sort of Del Boyish, in like a weird kind of, these things happen to him completely by accident that are absolutely ludicrous, but somehow he just manages to just flip it and turn it, like exactly like you said. Moroni keeled over. He did nothing to him. The guy would have absolutely annihilated him if he hadn't had that heart attack. But it will now be part of his reputation that he is the guy that killed Moroni.
Yeah, and even going back to the first scene,
In fact,
killing
although that just
Alberto,
gave me
and
flashbacks to what he did to Moroni's wife.
yeah, which from X-Men 3, by the way, it took me a couple of minutes to realise, but it was the nurse from X-Men 3. I
Oh
couldn't
yeah,
get it out of
yeah,
my
yeah.
head. But yeah, when thing it's he's so good at getting himself out of these situations. So he's almost like a rat. I know the point is it's a penguin, but it's everything about it. And again, you kind of love it. It's like, how's he going to get out of this situation?
Yep.
Car drives into a wall. There's the dead body missing the pinky,
Yeah.
and it does it almost every couple of even episodes 7 with his ma being took away.
Yep.
And it's like, how's he going to get out of this? Oh, look, he even got out of the rubble. Oh, and there's immediately knocked out, took away. He's so good at getting out of peril. And I kind of love him for it. That like unintentionally
Yep.
becomes the hero of was it Crown Point they called it, or Crown
Crown Point.
District,
Yep.
where he wanted the lights on not because he wants it for the city. His mum's cold in the flat they're hiding in, so he wants the electricity back on, and then out of that becomes the hero to everyone around there. And then he's subconsciously accidentally got all the gang leaders on his side,
Yeah.
only for all their lieutenants to, which I agree with, rising up and taking over. But the whole logic of the cracking the beer scenes, one of the best scenes of the whole series, and there are many great scenes in the series, but that's really set the seeds for not future appearances, but he's cleaned, as they say in last episode, right? The whole image is you need to clean your act up. You kind of
Yeah.
anything tying you to these, and it gives Penguin leverage on the council, sure, but it means that he's got everyone running everything below underground for him, which I think is going to have a massive impact down the line. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But
Yeah.
I just loved it, and one of the key things which will go down probably in history is his relationship with Vic, who going back to the second scene of the first episode, him choosing to spare the life of a kid to take him under his wing.
Yeah.
It's almost like an anti Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
Like
It is.
we're
Very
going to take this person, we're going to teach him how it is to be. He's my driver. I was once someone's driver, and I thought, it is that the father perspective. And then when you get to the later flashbacks, they're talking about saying if you can find someone that hasn't got a father that can find devotion and loyalty to somebody, he comes in handy. And then it follows that narrative for Penguin to kill Vic. I know it's a bit unfair on Vic, just narrow it down to that, but it is one of the most. We haven't seen the reaction yet. That will be one of the most spoken about
It's going to be
moments.
interesting to see how people react. Actually, I
I
think.
don't think
Yeah.
everyone's going to like it, which
No.
is good because he's a villain. He needs to
Exactly.
he can't come into the Batman 2 as like a not an anti-hero as such, but he can't come into the Batman 2 as this comical sidekick that might help Batman. He
Yeah.
was very funny in the first one, and he did that, didn't he? Where they had a bit of dirt on him, they had him speak, but this time he's going to be like playing like 4D chess with everyone, and he has to be clean to do that. And I think by having him kill his protege, who we've seen Penguin bail out at times as well as others, who was happy for him to go off to LA if he really wanted to.
Yeah.
And he's had to kill him because he knows too much. It's not because he called him family, but he was going off at some point. But the role of Vic, I absolutely loved, played by Rennie Feliz. Now, what I don't know, and I guess I should do my research, he has a very noticeable stutter in this. I don't know if the actor has it in real life.
Ooh,
If
I
it's
don't. Yeah. He.
a performance, it's great.
I think it's performance. Yeah. I
Because
could be wrong.
he's probably one of the most, and as an audience perspective, we're coming into the shows of him. We've been took under Penguin saying, how can you justify spending so much time around him?
Mm.
Penguin, you're the audience POV being with Vic. You get to see, and obviously with scenes when there's not Penguin, do I go to LA? Do I skate? Do I not? It's a really interesting perspective that they have us with him right through to the untimely death. But actually, he's a gangster at the end of the day. He's a gangster's driver.
Yeah.
He was stealing rims as the episode began, but
Which
he's
is
kind of a
ironically how
victim
Batman
still.
found his second Robin.
Oh, is it?
Jason Todd was stealing the wheels off the Batmobile in an alleyway.
Oh, I'm guessing that's intentional. I feel like that would be a very intentional reference.
Back before the show was out, again back to kind of San Diego when they were talking about the characters, they wouldn't say much about Vic, and they would only call him Vic. And I was like,
Oh.
"Is this Victor Stone? Is this Cyborg?" But no, it's Victor Aguilar. They really did not say much about his character at all up front before the show. I don't know what else he's been in. I think he was in Marvel's Runaways.
I suppose
Uh,
not, and he was a voice in Encanto, but he's a very young actor. He's done a
yeah,
couple of TV episodes here and there, but
he's
I'd
impressive
imagine
actor.
with a show like this, not jumping entirely, this is clearly going to be all over the Emmys next year. Let's be
Oh, it
honest. Let's
has
get
to
that out of the way.
be. It really
Miniseries
has to be.
category too.
Yeah,
Um, he, this is the it's a HBO primetime Sunday evening slot TV. You've just had a great season. You've started with Colin Farrell.
yeah.
It's a big property DC, and guess what? You're not tied to it anymore. He's not going to be short of offers moving forward.
I wonder as well if some of that is also, particularly what happens to him in the finale, is also about how they bring some of these characters into
Into
the
it.
Batman 2, and not, in a way, not to say that they killed him off for the sake of it, but you also can't bring everyone. So
Yeah,
Oz has to come back, obviously. Sophia, in theory, I presume we will see Sophia probably at some point down the line. You
and she's now
can't
going.
then have, like, you can't have Moroni, and you can't have Alberto Falcone, and you can't. We'd end up with too many people, and the universe would feel. I think it would feel too busy to be into another film. So I
Yeah,
felt like you needed to do something to certain players to get them off the board for us to not necessarily question why they might not be in the next film. And unfortunately for him, I think that this was the right way that it had to go for the story and for who Oz is as a person.
I agree because he popped up in the film. He'd be on the corner of Oz. He'd be
Yeah.
the shoulder on the Oz, and it'd be like, it's like the Boys season 4 when it was like they got some of the Gen V people in. It's
Yes,
like,
exactly.
oh yeah, glorified cameo, cool. Like we watched Gen V, cool. But other people like, who are these two?
Yeah.
What's the resemblance? And I think Matt Reeves is a bit not smart on that, but I think Warner Brothers, HBO, they're all a bit smart, saying, as you're right, there's a story in play.
Yeah.
This has been written knowing the Penguin story is done and dusted. If the final adjustment is September, I'd imagine Matt Reeves has probably seen all 8 episodes fully at that point. And
Yeah.
then if there was any changes left, those changes were made. And I think it ended in, as you said, it was the most appropriate, whether people like it or not. If the Penguin kept him alive, locked away, said go to LA, you'd think about he's not truly that evil, but
Hmm.
killing off the last person, yeah, like we've just spent 8 episodes with this kid. Like his parents were killed, he was orphaned.
Which
He
is a
wants
great
this life.
connection to bring you back to what the Riddler did in Batman as well.
And I
To be able to
like
see that.
the series has showed the knock on effects. It's not. I'm going to compare it to Marvel in a really good way. We got to see what the devastation Thanos' snap did. Granted, we were just told about it more by
Yeah.
characters. We didn't get to visually see it unless at the start of Endgame when the streets were
Yeah, you
full.
didn't spend that much
Very
time in
last.
it as a kind of period
Yeah,
of time.
seeing like the streets still a bit of water flooded,
Yeah.
knowing people were killed in blocks, knowing it's being referenced. Yes, it was a week before, but everything worked within story. And whether Batman 2 takes a time jump, we don't know. I hope it does for the sake. I love the Dark Knight trilogy, but you realise he was only actually Batman for 6 months. Batman Part 2, you want to take a year or two gap just to do that? You're more than welcome to. But
Yeah.
it's one of them. Yeah, as you said, you can't have too many characters on the chessboard. Like, if anyone's going to be in the Batman 2, you're thinking now the Counselor, the Penguin from this show who aren't already in the Batman stuff. And it's, as you said, you want to get Sofia Falcone in because we've not spoken about it yet. And I'll tell you this, whether it's social media, I have seen more posts about Sofia Falcone than anybody else in the show
I'm
for the
not
last 5
surprised.
or so weeks. It's safe to say she stole the show.
Yeah,
I
massively.
don't. You'd know more about the marketing. I know Cristin Milioti. I'd seen her in How I Met Your Mother. Then
Which
she's
is
in
all
Wolf of
I'd
Wall
seen her in as
Street.
well.
I'd say relatively unknown. Like she's not a household name as such, and I think she will be after. And again, after this show, showing the short of offers, playing one of the most terrifying yet you can't call her innocent, but she is a victim of the
Yeah,
story. I'd
yeah.
say probably one of the most interesting characters that this show has chosen to focus on. And the fact that we get her story before we get Oz's. We find out what happened to her
Yeah,
in the previous flashback, in the previous story, not Oz. That they almost get her story out the way to then turn your attention to Penguin being terrible and her being sort of a victim of kind. Yes, she kills her entire family, but you know what? We're all happy she did it. The one innocent one, the cousin, the cousin's kid, sorry, made sure she was safe, and even she doesn't end up happy. She
yeah.
knows that she did it. She'd seen the mask in her rucksack, and it's kind of like a. I don't. There's probably a Shakespeare play written somewhere where it's like a Shakespearean tragedy that she's wrongfully sent to an asylum for 10 years, does become crazy, yes, innocent. She's not the hangman,
Oh my god, it's.
and,
I
and it
mean,
oh, and
the
ends
fact.
up going straight back to that place
Yeah,
with the same name as before, with the same staff member as before. Yet she has this time committed atrocities, just not the original one she's knocking for.
yeah, and the fact that it was her dad who sent her there as well is just
Mm.
insane. But I feel like, I guess it's probably a comic book thing, it's probably a Batman thing, but certainly a Matt Reeves thing, and the way he's built his universe is the villains all have this really wonderful way of their story being written about how much their life, their family, their circumstances really messed them up to get them to the point where they were. So, like Riddler being an orphan who was in the Wayne orphanage, who is stood next to Bruce Wayne, who's this kid with all this money. And, he was watching the corruption of Gotham happening from afar and just felt like he had to do something about it. And if you read the comic book that, oh my God,
Oh,
actor who
Paul
played
Dano did a comic, didn't he?
Thank you, Paul Dano. So he wrote a Riddler Year One comic that's about his version of Riddler's Year One. So you learn about how when he was an accountant, he was going through all the books of the city and he was coming across all the problems with renewal and stuff like that. And you just learn about how much the city and the state that it was in impacted on him to get him to the point where he becomes the Riddler. Likewise, through this show you get to see what happened with Oz and how the way he was as a kid and the people that he was around influenced him to become the person that he is. And with Sofia, the fact that she was born into this family and how atrocious her dad was and how he used her as a scapegoat, which put her in Arkham, which led her to become the complete like ball of crazy that she is when she gets out and we meet her in this. And I think it's all really well written about how well it just is built into the world. Like there's just it's so rich. It's not just they're here and they're bad.
I'm glad you brought up Matt Reeves because that made me even think back to the Apes films where he
Yep.
came on board on the sequel. You've got Gary Oldman, who not everyone likes that, but he's a human trying to do the right thing, and they're unfortunately
Yeah.
drawn into the conflicts, and he lost his family, he just wants to have a home for humans. You got Cobra. I'm not saying I'm sympathetic to Cobra, but you understand why that ape was a villain. He was tested on, he doesn't want that. And
Yeah.
you go to Woody Harrelson in War, who is just a military person that had to kill his own son because he knows there is nothing more that can be needed than for humanity to survive. And those themes have come through in this. And I think with Sophia, her intro from coming in through the double doors, not knowing what Oz is thinking, and there's the bit of the mystery for episodes that what did Oz do? How did he betray her? Was it an obvious
Yeah.
betrayal? And it was actually something even not necessarily minor, but when he goes saying, "I don't know what your dad was going to do to you," you think, "Oh yeah, of course you say that," and then you actually get to episodes like, "Oh, like yeah, like no one could have known her
Mm.
dad would do that to her," and I just, as you said, the world's rich with these characters, and even having Falcone return, I know that John Turturro didn't come back to play him. There's various stories. Some
Slightly,
say
yeah,
scheduling. Some say he didn't like the violence against women.
yeah. Which is
I
in the nicest way possible. I find ironic considering he held a snooker cue to Zoe Kravitz's throat in the film.
that's that's what I kept thinking. I was like, I understand if
Although
he's read the script
that is
before.
in silhouette, and when you see it
Maybe
from
it's
his
not him,
perspective, you can't see her, and from the
but
back
still,
perspective, it's a silhouette. I feel like there's more violence towards women in the film. I mean, completely respect him to
no,
make a decision, but
I
I feel
agree.
like there is more in the film than there is in the show. I feel in the show it's a bit more implied in terms of what he would have been involved with and what he would have physically had to do in the show.
That's what I thought. Like, I'm not sort of
Yeah,
saying, "Oh, how didn't he come back?" 'Cause I thought Mark Strong was fine in
he's
it.
great. Yeah,
Mark Strong's good in everything. Like, you don't need to worry about Mark Strong, not being good in a series and being brought on board. But visually, it's a bit different to case to Mark Strong from John Turturro. But at the same
yeah,
time, I'm in that same logic. Like, without like a disregarding thing, it's I massively respect an actor for doing that. But as you said, like whether he didn't enjoy it in the film, that part, and that was him politely
yeah,
pushed away from like maybe I don't want to be involved and gets a script, and it's guess what, you actually did this to loads of people.
yeah,
I
exactly.
understand that, and again, as far as the mystery goes, knowing that he because when you see the mother, without getting a bit graphic, you immediately go to the Batman and think, yeah, because he was doing that to Zoe Kravitz. We know he's got a history of doing this.
Yeah.
He's done it to other people. He is violent, but for the daughter to work it out, and the journalist being obviously killed, which someone that powerful could do easily, but to
Oh,
see
which
him,
that was one I had to hold on to. I may have tweeted a GIF. I can't remember, but that reporter is named Summer Gleason, who is a character from Batman the Animated Series. So I about fell
you
off my
told me that. I
chair.
remember now.
Yeah, I did tell you that. Did we say that? Did I say that on camera?
I
I think
think
I
you
did.
said it. I think you said it on stream that you could just say there was a character from the animated series that
Yeah.
popped up.
So that was her. It was Summer Gleason. I kind of wish she'd been in it more, but what a role to have played, even in that just small part, to how integral she was to what happened to Sophia.
Yeah, and the whole Sophia segment, and this is kind of something where I think I'm not saying Batman Begins struggled with, but off the back of a couple of scenes in one film, a couple of scenes in this one episode, I guess we can say,
Yeah,
Arkham has become a character for the first time,
yeah,
which it hasn't really had outside of the games. I know it's a trilogy of
yeah.
games, fine, but me and you spoke quite a few times about. I know this is sort of like a joint Batman 2 hype as well as Penguin, but the direction I've always wanted Matt Reeves' story to go, on the basis of the Joker being having a cameo in the first film and knowing he'll at some point be a villain, I would like to see Arkham Asylum adapted into a film.
Mm.
I don't think that is possible unless there is a rogue gallery in the asylum.
Yeah, you need
And
a few films
certainly,
to build it up first
the
to get
first
people in there.
film First film's done it. The show's done it. We get to see how people are treating Arkham. We get to see the corruption within Arkham. Very disturbing. I think I saw an interview where they're talking about the sequences. The friend messaged me the fork scene. They're like, even for HBO, we didn't see this coming. Like that's not something
Wow.
they thought would come that sort of brutal in the
Yeah,
show. And it has made Arkham a character to the point that when Sophia gets caught, she'd rather have took the bullet than gone back to Arkham. And it's almost like Penguin's final sort of middle finger to her is, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to make
send you back.
sure
Yeah,
so you're sent back there because we know what it did to you. And this time she doesn't have a brother to come visit her weekly. She doesn't have anyone looking out for her. She is a complete lost cause. And it's probably devastating because, yes, she's a gangster. She murdered a lot of people. She did blow up the city.
yes,
But she wasn't the hangman. She didn't kill those girls. And she was wrongfully sent there. And I think there's that cruel, poetic sides to Gotham that does that really well. And I don't know.
yeah.
I really liked the Arkham sequences. And as you said, it keeps Sophia on the board. Should she pop up in a film? Should the Penguin end up in the asylum at some point?
Yeah,
Uh,
she might have some words.
and this is it. And it just makes me think again of a bigger picture, a
Yeah,
universe. It
exactly.
feels like a universe that's lived in. That if someone said, "Hey, can you cameo in something?" I can't imagine them saying no. Ironically, after having a chat about Mark Strong replacing someone who said no. But I don't know the Sophia stuff. I think her performance, certainly in episode 4, is going to be the Emmy. You told this to me, didn't
Oh,
you? I remember you
I did.
saying that. You
Yeah,
said episode 4. That's I think you said, "Oh, it's a really good performance." People talk about Emmys, but then you said episode 4 is
yeah.
that's now seriously. And I don't mean this in an arrogant way, like film people talking about it, but you're a DC fan as well as like a film fan. The distinction between like superhero genre and mainstream media and the accolade side of things, but to make that jump from comic book to Oscars,
Mm,
Emmys in this case, it's substantial. And
yeah.
I think for you to say no, this will be an Emmy
It
type
will. It
episode.
absolutely. If she is not nominated for Emmys and Globes, then it's a genuine travesty because her performance, especially coming from predominantly being known for comedy, she's like it is one of the single best performances of the year in anything I have seen. She is
Even her
just
teeth are scary. They're not fake teeth, but I don't know what she's doing with her mouth, but the
yeah.
smiles are quite intimidating.
She
And
she does crazy incredibly well. She does the accent pretty well as well. Like I love the voice that she puts on. It's like she. I mean, if you listen to her talk, she's a huge DC fan, as it turns out.
okay,
She used to dress up and pretend to be like she would play on the playground as DC villains when she was a kid. If you listen to the way she tells it in interviews, um, and she said she's auditioned for. I don't know. I don't think she ever named any films, but she's auditioned for plenty of roles in comic book movies before and never got them. and she's kind of like, do you know what? In a way, I'm kind of glad because it led me to Sofia, and like that is, again, if you've only ever seen her in How I Met Your Mother, you're thinking, oh, weird, someone from random sitcom from the season that people are like, that was not the best season. Um, and then you're just like, whoa, it's just, yeah, it's incredible. It is insane.
Even my dad, when he's enjoying a show, he goes to Wikipedia after, and
And I'm going
it's
to look
like
this up.
it's like this Sophia. She's I've not seen her in much. She's been in too much, but she's been in some things. And I'm like, and then he never talks about this. He goes when watching the finale, he goes the costume department have done a very good job with this character. I was like, my dad's talking about the costumes. I mean,
Wow.
that goes to show. I mean, the costumes are phenomenal. She wears and her evolution across the series with
Oh, especially because
the
if you
long
think about
hair.
it, well, yeah, the hair for a start, but she also, the first time, I'm pretty sure the first time we see her, she's wearing all white,
Yeah,
which kind of,
angel
if you want to go,
innocence.
mise en scène, let's talk about she's innocent. She's the girl, and she's in white. She has the innocence about her. She's the victim. She's just out of Arkham. Finale, black dress for most of it, with just a pop of red in the scarf, and then the kind of vixen devil red in the last costume before you see her in an Arkham um,
And
uniform.
another
Prison
another
uniform.
one I noticed. Yeah, it's uniform, and it's she covers. She's got the scarf on episode one, right, covering up the wounds. And
Yeah,
I'm not saying in a creepy she wears less clothes each episode, but the evolution of character is suddenly the clothes are looser and looser and looser. You're seeing more of her skin, you
the
see more
scar
of
on
her
her shoulder.
wounds, and it's
Yeah,
she is like owning it. And I'm glad you wore the accent because it's the way she like pronounces like gigante. Like
yeah.
I've got a friend who lives in New York, and his surname is Gisante. So when I've seen him say I think that's time I saw him at Celebration Cheer, he's like, it's James Gisante, and I was like, I kept thinking of him every time she said name because the accent's nailed down, and Colin Farrell's accent is perfect in this as well. I absolutely love it. He spoke about his dialect coach that they were
Yeah,
listening to a tape of like a hotel employee,
yeah,
and that's what they based it off, which is remarkable. And I'm glad he's brought up his dialect coach as much as his acting because
yeah,
it's a very underrated role within the industry that I don't think gets enough credit. An
yeah.
actor loves to take the credit, but again, he is sharing that. I think he's given her name at every opportunity in
I
interviews as
feel like
well.
we only really talk about accents when someone does a bad one. I don't
Yeah.
feel like anyone ever really praises a great one. I feel like people always linger on what is a terrible one.
And to know there's like tapes of like hundreds and hundreds of people like over the years in varying locations, places, cities
Yeah,
is quite remarkable. And I'm very curious about that kind of thing.
yeah,
But the casting in this with these two doing the accents, it didn't feel like, I know it's obviously meant to be like an Italian American New York type thing, but even her taking her mother's maiden name as
yeah,
she like takes over the Falcone family, I love that sort of self identity. This is who I'm going to be, and even like burning the house down, saying whoever gets me yours gets it, and the whole logic was I want to leave because I can, and all she's ever going to think about is I should have got on that plane. I could have
yeah,
gone at any point, and I think she's an incredible character. And
yeah. I
I don't
can,
say I don't think we've seen the last of her, but I think if she never appears again, the characters have got to have an incredible legacy. If she
yeah,
does appear again, it will be welcomed.
yeah.
And the Selena Kyle stuff is what's
Perhaps
really
they're
interesting.
just going to have this completely kind of unseen relationship where they write back and forth to each other whenever Selena comes in and out of the story. And whenever we reach the Arkham Asylum, if we get to Arkham Asylum, there'll be a moment where Selena breaks in to help get Bruce out before the whole place burns down, and she breaks open a door and rescues her sister. And we won't have seen her since Penguin finale, and it'll be 10 years down the line, and she just breaks her out, and we're like, she's back.
It's there's a lot of potential. It's
Yeah.
very. I mean, kind of where we're going is we all talk about the Batman suit. I know we spoke about it a lot, but we've got a little segment, people. But I mean, we spoke about some of the key characters. Do we have much to add on the overall story? I know we've sort of spoke about it being Penguin's sort of rise to power as such. I feel like we've crossed some of the
Mm.
main talking points. Do you think we're missing anything before we do start talking about the future?
I think we need to talk about Deirdre O'Connell for a minute. Frances Cobb,
Yes.
Oz's mum, and I don't want to get. I've got the names in front of me because I do not want to miss her. Who played the young version of Frances? Don't want to
Emily
miss her.
Mead.
Thank you, both of them. Great job of mirroring each other at different points in her life, but Jesus, another. I mean, she also deserves a supporting role nomination. Frances, no, that's her name. Deirdre O'Connell deserves a nomination for kind of supporting for playing the present day version of Frances because she's incredible. She has these moments of lucidity where you can kind of tell that she's sort of probably aware of who Oz is and how bad he is, but then she seems like this doting mother, and he is so devoted to her, and then she disappears into her, her mental disease, and she's not there, and she's falling apart, and she doesn't know what's happening, and she plays being disorientated so well. And then you get to the finale, and they're diving into her memories, and you get to see the flashback version a few times across the season. But and again, it's an outstandingly written character, performed incredibly by two really great actresses.
Especially the finale. I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know if I've ever seen a flashback type where let's take the modern day older actress,
Isn't
let's
it
put her
genius?
into the flashback. Yeah, I know we'll have the others interweaving through
Yeah,
the tech, but it was a really great way to, as you said, give Deirdre more acting sequences
yeah,
to see the impact of because you mentioned almost like a faulty narrator that did Oz could Oz actually have killed the brothers? We think he did, but is there a scenario where he didn't kill them?
yeah,
And it's her knowing, 'cause I know what that boy's capable of. Like I know he did it. I know he did this. I know he wanted me. But it's just the moment he's at the table. He's like everyone. I'm smart. Everyone thinks he's like when you're smoking more, it's because you're thinking more. When you're
oh yeah,
drinking more, it's because you're sadder. It's this, and
yeah,
to me that clicked everything about his character. That every single time in the show he's been put under pressure, a scenario's popped up. Sure, he's got away with it, but he is very intelligent within the series, and it's like they had that ending in mind of that
yeah,
flashback that he was always. She says it very early on. He is always one step ahead of you. You need something. He is a one step ahead. He's going to kill you. He's going to do this to
yeah.
you. And she was telling the truth, and she spent her whole life in fear and equal hatred of her son, whilst also loving him at that exact same way. It's like a horrible trident,
It's a
and
really messed up family relationship.
leaving her in the penthouse at the end. She's got the tear going down the eye. He's
Yeah,
made it. Like my dad picked up on something great. I'm not going to take credit for this. The film they're watching in the flashback.
yeah.
I forgot the name of it. He's wearing a top hat. The actor that he's fascinated by. So when my dad was
Oh,
watching, we got to the endings. I made a joke. My sister, like, when we were talking about Event, I was like, "This is the penguin. Like, he's going to end up as the penguin with the top hat and a tux." It's like
yeah.
they'll probably never do the top hat in this day and age. 20 minutes later, top hat,
There it
please.
is.
I was like, the fucking top hat, and I was
Yeah,
like, I've never been excited to see a top hat in a film before. It's almost like oh god, what's one of them like great origin sequences where like everything comes into motion like tick by tick by tick. I
yeah.
can't remember what it is, but the penguin getting the top hat ready for and the tux, the top hat. It's going on what the film is. I
And
forgot.
Frances, in that flashback where they go to the bar, to the club that night, she's smoking a
The
cigarette.
old school.
Yeah, which I mean, we haven't. I don't think we've seen. Have we seen him smoke? I don't know that we have.
He's had
But
a cigar, I think,
he
but I
has
don't
smoked a
know.
cigar, I
He
think.
hasn't had the traditional. I always think
But
of
that's obviously that's very Burgess Meredith. In '66 would have that
yeah.
exact thing. So I was like, oh, just level of detail. Thank
He
you.
might have it in the next
Yep.
film.
And the fact that it's a gold coloured waistcoat that he wears underneath as well is slightly Danny DeVito esque as well. When he is, I think it's more silver that he wears, but it's very. It feels very much apart from traditional Penguin. It feels very sort of slightly DeVito-ish in terms of its nods and some of the costume towards the end as well. I feel like there was honouring a lot of the legacy of Penguin from across all media in how they pulled him together and the little just details they had throughout the whole show.
Yeah, and I think
Big
that
up to
is something
Ryder Allen as well as young Oswald for just being incredible as well.
in
Like,
multiple episodes. The sequence of the brothers where the brothers just took the piss out of it. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to kill him. And I was like, oh, there wasn't a
yeah,
we're going to go back get him because the way he speaks about him to Vic Hurst, don't ever bring my brothers' names up. Make
yeah.
sure it's implied that oh god, like
What
he
happened?
probably loved his brothers, like
Yeah,
what something bad must have happened, and it was him the entire time, and it's him lying there at the cinema, and he just sat there watching that musical. But yeah, for my dad to clock the top hat in the
mm,
musical, thinking Penguin's wearing it because he's made it, the promise that I was like, I didn't think of it that way, and
yeah,
I can't wait to see him wear the top hat. I'm sorry, we're gonna see it. It's gonna look outrageous. It's gonna look so, and Colin Farrell's gonna play it so well.
yeah,
And I kind of texted you straight. I was like, I just need Rob Pattinson's Bruce Wayne
Yeah.
have some screen time as Bruce Wayne with Cobb.
I suppose the
Because
question now is, does he reopen the Iceberg Lounge as the more sort of traditional Iceberg Lounge that we would know it as, where it's more of a where the high society folk go, that's, shipping guns in the back room rather than kind of
I
being the club where everyone's doing drugs. So I wonder how much it will stay the drug focus, or whether it will move on to something a little more traditional or not.
I thought it was going to go. I thought of the ending when we get him at the penthouse, we were going to go to the Iceberg Lounge, but
Me too.
I do think that's going to be because it was the Liverpool docks. Was that filmed?
Yeah,
If they're going to shoot there again, maybe. But I do think that's going to be because he loved the Iceberg Lounge. He said at the start, didn't he? That
yeah.
Alberto says, Falcone didn't mind you nipping a little bit. You weren't ever taking too much enough for him
Skimming
to
off
really
the top.
care.
Yeah,
And it's like, and you knew your place. Your place
yeah.
was with the Iceberg Lounge, and I would like us to revisit that as a really big location. And I think kind of where we're segueing with this is talking HBO. We spoke about the Batman 2 a fair amount.
What do
Before
they
we
do
really,
next?
yeah, like this show ends with the Bat Signal coming on, which was great. We kind of it was almost like a, I know you're not into wrestling, like CM Punk coming back at Chicago. It was like we're at the final millisecond of the show. It's the closing shot. You're
Yeah,
zooming out from
right at the end.
a
Yeah,
landscape. For WWE, that was the trademark logo which came at the end of the episode, and then it was ping, Bat logo. No Batman theme. I wish it
no,
had it. But it's a reminder. This is his city. Yes, it's the Penguin, but the Penguin doesn't own the city because Batman's here. And to me, coming into the show, I kind of said this to yourself on text. I was like, the Penguin's gonna. I think before yesterday, before watching the finale, the Penguin's going to be like the secondary villain
yeah.
of the sequel, but he'll be important, but still a secondary villain. Now I'm actually sat here thinking, could he be the lead villain?
Ooh.
Because he's got he's got control of the drugs and the underground. Gotham's underground's in his pocket. He's got a high-ranking politician in his pocket. He's got himself into high society. It's very much actually like for any Peaky Blinders fans. It's very much how Tommy Shelby's gone basically across 6 seasons. He ends up as an MP. But Penguin's very much in this high political, almost untouchable level. And I am curious is whether, again, we don't know who else is going to be in the Batman. I'm sure surely in the next 4 or 5 months, we're going to find out who the lead villain is going to be by a
I would have
casting.
thought so. Yeah, they're going to have to. Casting must be somewhere
Happen.
that they're at now. Yeah,
And I just sat there wondering, do you think Penguin could be the lead villain? I still
so
think he'll be there, but
yeah,
I with this show to me makes him a credible threat in the
it
underworld
does.
and high plats.
I wonder how much Matt Reeves is taking inspiration from really, really like contemporary now comic books. Because a lot of what we've just seen is very Long Halloween, which is obviously you go back to kind of the 90s for a lot of where his inspiration came from. But they've just finished a series literally just called The Penguin, written by Tom King, which is kind of it's not similar in terms of its content, but in terms of its positioning of Oz, is kind of similar, um, in that it tells a story of him very much once he's in the position he's in at the end of the show, and in that he is kind of like an informant to Batman. So not
Oh,
in a he's a good guy way. Absolutely, still deplorable, despicable, kind of mob boss sort of guy, but because there are other things happening in Gotham, like Jokers and Freezes and people of a more like grand melodramatic scale, Batman in that story uses Oz and his underworld position as a I won't bust what you're doing because there are bigger fish to fry and you can get me information that I need because of where you are. So might we, to begin with, see him still doing some of the shit that he's been doing with drugs and weapons and other stuff, but similar to how Batman was in the Batman, will he go to him for information? But will it be more of a, rather than just you're the guy in the club, it'll be a I know what you're doing, I will bust you, but if you help me, I'll help you. Kind of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, kind of thing.
that would work great.
Mm,
And do you know what? I'll chuck in one more. if we were to get Bruce Wayne interacting with Oz, could we get Oz work out the identity of the Batman? If he's they've made him
If
out
he's
to
that
be
smart, yeah.
very smart. Ironically, the Riddler couldn't work it out, and yet the entire room, the entire world thought of that sequence. Oh shit, he figured it out because
Yeah.
Batman thought that too. Whether he actually does still know that the world, I still think he knows, but he just didn't want to say anything. But
He might have, yeah.
there's so much potential with this, and really kind of reflecting on this series. It's the conversations we've had coming up a second season. Do you need a second season
I
with
don't
this
think
ending? I
so.
don't think you
No.
do. I think it served its purpose. The second season's called The Batman Part 2, and it's better. It's not better, but it's a film. It's
Yeah.
you're going to get him on the big screen for everybody to see. It's going to make $1 billion. And then rumors today, which I don't want to enlighten too much because it's on World of
Yeah.
Real. I don't think this is true, but
No.
this was going to be a question for today anyway. We know there are plans for more HBO, shows within the Reeves
Yep.
Batman verse. The original first show was going to be a cop,
Yep.
not a buddy cop, but it was going to be about two policemen within the Gotham Police Department. That slowly got shut down, but it did get shut down. And then the
Yeah.
Penguin came, which I'll be honest, I'm going to watch anything in Matt Reeves verse. Selling a series about two cops within Batman's world a lot harder than selling the Penguin.
Yeah.
And Matt Reeves has said he wants to do more shows. I am kind of what you said, right? It's not doing a Marvel, it's not doing a Star Wars. There's not too many shows. Here's like 4 shows and 3 films in production. It's gonna whilst we're gonna make the Batman, in between we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
I am all for I say more. If they was turn around and say there's 2 Batman TV shows in development, I'd be like, okay. I wouldn't want 3.
No.
2 would be the limit. 1, I think they're already working on one. What that is, I don't want it to be a Joker one, not because
No, me
of
neither.
Joker
Me neither.
Folie à Deux,
You don't.
not because of anything.
Yeah.
They're hiding Barry Keegan's Joker on purpose, so I'd really not like to see him until it's filmed properly.
Yeah.
But if there is a plan for maybe another character they want to introduce in the next film, or somebody else somewhere, if Matt Reeves is creatively involved the same way he was with this and brought in the right people within HBO, they can do what they want. What that show would be, I don't know, and I don't just want to hand it over to you. But is there anything that because we don't know who's going to be in future Batman
Exactly.
films?
It's so
The
difficult.
obvious one was the Penguin. Who
Yeah.
could you have done a series about in between?
Yeah. There's no one else you could have done it about from that film. I don't think it
Could you
would
do
be
a Catwoman
interesting.
series? I don't know.
That's exactly
Not
what I was about to say.
disrespecting it,
Yeah, I
but
don't think it would
would
be
it be as
interesting to
interesting?
see where she went and what she did necessarily. I don't.
Because we've had her key story with Falcone in the first film.
Yeah, yeah. There's. I don't. Right now, I can't off the top of my head think of an interesting story that would fit around her. The obvious one that keeps coming up is Harvey Dent, who we haven't met yet in this world. But do you flip from, okay, in the first series that we did in this world, we looked at the mob. We then come back and do another film. We introduce a Harvey Dent character. The next series that bridges between 2 and 3, we'll look at what the legal side and the kind of what it's like being a district attorney and working on the lawful side of Gotham and dealing with some of the corruption and the government. Maybe we flip and we look at that angle of it for a little while.
I'd take a Harvey Dent show in a
Yeah.
heartbeat. Again, within this, and not on the premise of it's an origin, but you go back to the Arkham years. I think they've just done a VR game where we've seen
which I
the
really
origin
want to play.
we've seen. I won't spoil the scene, but we see the origin of Arkham's Harvey Dent through VR.
Ooh, interesting.
I won't go into details of it, but it was an interesting watch.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a good precedent with his character if we go back to the Long Halloween and that being the kind of basis for Matt Reeves' world, because there's a really long game story with him that's still playing out now in the last Halloween, which has just dropped its second issue. So right through Long Halloween, Dark Victory, there's a big origin for Two-Face, but also what's going on with his wife and their family situation. There's a lot in there that you could do with a Harvey Dent in this world if that's your blueprint.
and what I would love of a Harvey Dent show would be I know we never got to see Billy
You
Dee
want
Williams.
Katie Holmes back as Rachel Dawes?
What? Who knows? But I'm not mocking doing it on film. If you had Harvey Dent in the sequel, and then Two-Face in the third film, and in between, then you've done a series, you've done the incident. If you want to Two-Face him in a sequel, what's everyone going to compare it to? The Dark Knight.
Yeah, exactly. And also, who would do it? Because Falcone and Maroni are both dead. It's supposed to be Moroni that does it. Interesting.
Penguin could be anything, and I just wonder if it feels like of the Rogue Gallery, looking at that side, with how early it is in Rob Patterson's Batman's technical career as such. I don't know if a Commissioner Gordon show would sell as well, as much as I
Yeah.
love Gordon, and I feel like The Dark Knight did a perfect job of making Gordon a three-dimensional character with his family, etc. Harvey Dent series,
You get a
great.
lot of baggage with that as well, because as soon as you introduce his kids, people will start thinking, "Oh, Batgirl," for one.
So
But then you're kind of really, really deep cut comic book fans will also know a lot about James Jr. Um, because he is a psychopath. He is a serial killing psychopath, and there is not a fun story in there. Well, it's interesting to read, but it's Jim does not have a good time with his son. He is a horrible, horrible, evil person.
there we go. So I'm not making it a vote, so we've got to start doing Mount Rushmore, but I'm kind of Harvey Dent seems the most obvious at this point in time.
Yeah,
For all we know, the sequel might introduce 2 or 3 new characters like the Penguin.
yeah.
Hey, we're going to do. I know the first one was, hey, we're going to have Penguin pop up, and we'll make sure he's not a lead character. But now he's going to be. And I just wonder
Maybe
if they
there's an
want to do that.
incredible romance story somewhere about a doctor, Victor Fries, whose wife has a terminal disease and he is desperately just trying to cure her. And it's this really, tragic romance story about these two people and how they fell in love. And she is then terminally ill and he tries to save her and ends up going crazy through it. Maybe that's a story that exists somewhere, or I'm trying to think of who else might be on the bookshelf behind me that I can think of, but I'm
I
drawing
do
a
think
blank.
Mr. Freeze feels like the one. I love Arnie's Mr. Freeze. Different conversation, I know, but enough time has passed to try and do it. I guess the question, Mr. Freeze, has always been: does he fit in Matt Reeves' world?
Yeah, exactly.
If they, I would love to see him back on. I say back. I'd just love to see them try and do it on the big screen, and I
Yeah.
think audience at this point in time would. Scarecrow. There was a moment I forgot the name of the character. Doctor Cass, Julius Cass was it? The one that was sort of in love with Sofia in the
Oh,
series.
yeah. Yes.
I don't know if it's a bit arrogant. I just kept thinking like,
Who is he
are you
gonna
gonna is he gonna call himself like Dr. Crane or something at the end?
Yeah.
Like, because he was very
He was
ambiguous.
doing
Like
Yeah.
I was like, is it the drug as well?
Yeah.
The red crystals? Like, could there be some penguin
Yeah.
shenanigans? Not penguins, sorry, scarecrow shenanigans going on in the background? And I'm glad it's not. He's in a very unique place moving forward. But again, if they're gonna really explore Arkham, character I'd love to see again, I think could be one for film. Hugo Strange at some point. That's another one that's
I
on a lot
also
of
wondered
lists.
whether he was gonna turn out to be a kind of Hugo Strange type character.
I'm still in the camp. I, I don't know how this day ever came. I saw on Photoshop Batista's in once, and I was like, I can't. Right, there's so many actors that could probably play Hugo Strange, but I can't unsee the Batista as Hugo Strange. I don't
Yeah.
know why.
Yeah.
But Hugo again, if they're building up Arkham, you'd think Strange would be involved at some point, especially when they imply that people have left Arkham from the old regime that were in Falcone's pocket. So there's a lot of potential with this, and I know this sort of Penguin spoilers has equally been talking about the Batman as much, but I think this is such a healthy thing about the show. No one's saying, "Oh, they've ruined the first show. They've ruined it by brewing this bridge," and
Yeah.
now we have to watch that to understand this. We kind of got that out in the first
Yeah.
couple of minutes that this isn't. As long as they, I'm not saying don't do a Marvel, but I trust Matt Reeves, not Warner Brothers, to keep this under control. My biggest fear is Warner Brothers turning around and saying, "This did well, go make 3."
I think it's
Like,
the fact that it's under DC Studios now, so they don't have that level of control because it's got to go through Gunn and Safran, because they are their own company. And I will beat this drum till the end of time. They are their own company. Warner Brothers can't necessarily tell them what they can and can't do.
okay, could Warner Brothers? I know you might know, but
Mm-hmm.
could if Warner Brothers wanted to pull funding and say, "Yeah, you want to make that, but we're not going to,"
Yeah, that's the only bit I'm ambiguous
because
on.
Joker 1, Warner Brothers funded a third of it, didn't they? That's what I always found interesting, and they had to go get the fund. That
Yeah,
sums up Warner Brothers is you missed out on $1 billion because you only funded 8 mil out of the 25, and then you funded all of the 200 mil on the one that made a loss.
yeah,
But I have seen this week Warner Brothers Zaslav has spoken at length about some of their films that didn't work out too well. And they
Ooh,
need to do things more like The Penguin was cited. Whether that's just Zaslav saying it because it's been told to say it, who knows? But it leaves us in a very exciting place for the Batman Part 2. And when there is stuff to talk about, we'll obviously talk about it. We're a long way away. Neil, what are you up to on Get Your Comic Con at the moment? I know
what
there's
are
been a
we
lot of
up
new
to?
releases.
Um, so, to be honest, starting to think about wrapping up this year and what's left to come and what plans we want for next year and think about what big stuff is coming. So, we're already talking about what we're going to do to celebrate Superman, uh, which is obviously not until July next year, how we're going to celebrate stuff like Captain America. So, we're actually kind of, I feel like 2024 is coming to a slightly premature end and we're starting to plan for next year already, which is going to be a really big and really exciting year. And we're talking about how we're going to resurrect podcast, which I have not said publicly yet, but we haven't had one out since May because I was doing it by myself, and I think it's just boring when it's one host. So we're talking about how we can resurrect and what that might look like. So exciting
Excellent.
plans ahead.
Everybody follow Neil on there and his socials. There's a lot of good stuff. Transformers 1's online now, is in fully for you to rent and buy at home. There's a lot of coverage on your channel from when that
Yes, we do.
launched.
Yeah, we
You
had
saw it back at Comic Con as
we
well, didn't you?
yeah we interviewed the director and also producer who we've interviewed a couple of times. Who was, I mean, he has worked on so much. That guy, Lorenzo Di Bonaventura. I didn't even realize he was a producer on Keanu Reeves' Constantine. He has his name is everywhere. If you look him up on IMDb, it's insane. Really, really interesting guy to chat to. Um, yeah,
Everybody, please check it. I'm excited to hear when the podcast comes back. That's always a good one. And once again, a massive thank you for jumping on. I know this is very last minute. For people at home that don't know, this always didn't happen today. It was a text like, I may get an episode, I may get the finale early. If I do, could we record? Could we fit it in? But I might not know until Thursday night. And so a massive thank you for jumping on. And for people at home, as we said before, please do comment your thoughts. A Batman series you'd like to see within this universe. What you'd like to see in the Batman suit, all that kind of stuff. Do comment, let us know. It's been a really exciting discussion. It's been great talking about Penguin. I can tell it's a really flu. You've got all these things you can find and talk about.
yeah.
No doubt someone somewhere's going to comment saying we missed something really obvious. If you do comment it, we'll reply. That being said, once again, thank you everybody for watching, for our new subscribers, for people that have stuck with us for a long time. It really does mean a lot. You mentioned you're rounding up for this year. We are at work on the last December. It's Christmas stuff slowly coming up. Hooray!
Yeah,
hooray! So there's a lot of videos happening. We announce them on our social medias. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, all under linktree.com/cinemasavvy. We've got a lot of shorts now as well. So some people that prefer those sort of meatier, quicker things, that'll link through to the main video. So have a check out of them if you're curious about what we get up to on some of our other streams. And that is going to do it for today. We've got a Mount Rushmore dropping tomorrow, which is Ridley Scott films. Very topical. Gladiator 2's out this week. We'll have a review for that at some point. I think we've also got a very special video coming out this Saturday, if the dates are working in my head. So a lot of different things happening. But once again, that will run out today. So as I said, thank you all for watching so much, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.